The great hall of the alien palace was filled with golden light. Tall pillars carved with strange faces and banners that showed the victories of the alien queen. At the center stood her throne high above all others, made of black stone that seemed alive. The alien courtiers gathered, their voices sharp and proud. They were speaking about humans again, mocking them as weak creatures that could never rise above chains. The alien queen leaned back on her throne, her crown glowing with silver fire. Her laughter echoed through the chamber. It was not soft laughter, it was cruel, meant to remind everyone who held the power. "Humans," she said, her voice rolling like thunder. "They are fragile, they break so easily. I could crush 10 with one hand." Her court cheered, clapping their clawed hands. Nodding in agreement on the floor below, humans stood in silence, slaves who had been brought to serve. They carried trays, polished the floors, and bowed deeply to avoid the queen's gaze. Most of them kept their eyes low, fear filling their hearts. But one man did not. His name was Daniel, a human with strong arms and calm eyes. He stood still, carrying a tray of silver cups. His gaze did not rise, but his shoulders held a quiet strength. The queen noticed him, she smiled. But her smile was sharp like a knife. "Look at this one," she said. Pointing at Daniel, the crowd turned to see. Some laughed, others sneered. "Humans are pets, nothing more," she said. "Watch as I show you how weak they are." She ordered Daniel to step forward. The human obeyed, walking slowly. His chains clinked with every step, but he did not stumble. He stood before the throne, his face calm. The queen leaned forward, her eyes glowing. "Tell me, human," she said. "What do you think of your kind? Are you weak like I say? Or do you think humans are something greater?" Her voice was mocking, her words designed to break him. The court waited for laughter, but Daniel stayed silent. His silence felt heavy, even dangerous. The queen tilted her head, annoyed. "Speak!" she demanded. Daniel lifted his eyes for a brief second. His look was steady, and in that moment the queen felt something strange. It was not fear, it was something else. The courtiers whispered, "Why does he not tremble? Why does he not bow deeper?" The queen waved her hand and laughed again. "See," she said, "this human thinks he has pride. But pride means nothing, watch as it crumbles." She snapped her fingers, and one of her guards struck Daniel across the face. The sound echoed through the hall. The tray fell, silver cups rolling across the floor. Gasps filled the chamber. The human should have fallen. But Daniel did not. He stood still, his cheek red, his lip cut. His eyes remained calm. The queen leaned back, a flicker of interest crossing her face, but she hid it with another laugh. "He is stubborn, nothing more," she said. "A stubborn animal is still an animal." The courtiers cheered again, though their voices were less certain now. Some eyes kept returning to Daniel, wondering why he did not collapse. The hall felt different. A seed of doubt had entered. The queen felt it too, but she would never admit it. She rose from her throne, her gown sweeping the floor, her crown shining brighter. She walked down the steps and stood before Daniel. Her height made her tower over him. Her voice was low but sharp. "Kneel," she commanded. Daniel did not move. Silence spread like a shadow. The guards stepped closer, ready to force him down. The queen lifted her hand, stopping them. She wanted to see. She wanted to know why this human did not break like the others. Daniel's voice finally came, low and steady. "Humans are not weak," he said. The words were simple, but they hit the hall like a stone thrown into still water. The courtiers laughed nervously, but their laughter did not last. The queen's smile faded for a moment, then returned sharper. "We shall see," she whispered. The hall trembled with the weight of unspoken tension. The courtiers leaned closer, curious and afraid. Daniel stood with his chains, silent but unbroken. The queen walked back to her throne slowly, her eyes never leaving him. She sat again, her smile wide but her mind unsettled. For the first time in many years, the alien queen had seen something that disturbed her. In a single human's calm defiance, she felt a shadow of doubt. A question she never wanted to ask herself. What if humans were not weak? What if they had strength the galaxy had not yet understood? And so the mocking throne, built on pride and cruelty, trembled ever so slightly, not from power but from the silence of one human who refused to kneel. The next day, the great hall of the palace was filled again. The courtiers gathered with eager whispers. Everyone wanted to see what the queen would do with the strange human who had refused to kneel. The story of his silence had already spread. Some said he was foolish, others said he was cursed. But many felt a secret thrill because no human had ever dared stand before the queen like that. The alien queen sat upon her black throne, her silver crown glowing. Her laughter returned, but it was thinner now. "Bring the human forward," she commanded. The guards dragged Daniel into the center of the hall. His chains rattled, but his step was steady. His cheek was bruised from the strike yesterday. Yet his eyes carried the same calm strength. The queen leaned forward. "You stood against me yesterday. You refused to kneel," she said. "Do you think you are better than the rest of your kind?" Her voice was sharp, echoing across the chamber. The courtiers waited for Daniel's fear, but he answered in a low voice, steady and clear. "Humans are not weak." The words sent ripples through the hall. Some courtiers hissed in anger. Others smirked as if waiting for his punishment. The queen raised her hand and the room fell silent. Her smile grew cruel. "Then prove it," she said. "Prove it before me. Before my court, if you survive, perhaps I will admit your kind has some worth." A murmur spread. The courtiers loved challenges, especially ones that ended in blood. "What is your test, my queen?" one asked eagerly. The queen rose, her gown flowing like water. She pointed to the dueling circle in the middle of the floor. "Let him face one of my warriors," she declared. Gasps echoed. The warriors of the queen were not ordinary soldiers. They were champions, trained from birth, stronger and faster than most species could imagine. To place a human against one was like throwing a bird against a storm. Daniel's chains were removed. The guards expected him to fall to his knees in fear, but he only rubbed his wrists. His calmness unsettled even them. He looked at the dueling circle and then at the queen. His voice was soft but steady. "I accept." The hall erupted. Some laughed, others shouted in disbelief. "A human cannot fight a warrior," they cried. The queen lifted her hand, silencing them again. She wanted to see how long this defiance would last. The chosen warrior stepped forward. His name was Zerath, tall, armored, with skin like dark stone and eyes glowing with green fire. He towered over Daniel, holding a long spear tipped with energy. The court cheered his name, confident the fight would end in seconds. Daniel was given no weapon. The queen smirked. "Let him use his hands," she said. "If humans have strength, let us see it bear." Laughter filled the chamber again. The duel was set, the gong struck, and the warrior moved. His spear cut through the air like lightning. The human dodged barely, the tip missing his shoulder by an inch. Gasps rang out. He was not fast enough to win, but he was fast enough to survive the first strike. And that was already more than anyone expected. Daniel moved with care, his steps quiet, his body low. He watched the warrior's shoulders, not his weapon. His eyes were sharp. His every motion showed not fear but calculation. The warrior struck again. This time with crushing force, Daniel rolled to the side, the spear slamming into the floor with a boom. Sparks flew. The crowd leaned forward, their laughter fading. Something about the human's movements unsettled them. Minutes passed. Each time the spear came, Daniel found a way to avoid it. He was breathing hard, but he kept his calm. His endurance, his will, they were not breaking, the warrior snarled. Insulted that a human lasted this long, his strikes grew faster. Harder, louder. At last, Daniel struck back. It was not with a weapon, but with his fist. His hand slammed into the warrior's throat just as the spear missed. The warrior staggered, choking for air. The court gasped louder than ever. No one had seen a human strike an alien champion before. The queen's eyes narrowed. For the first time, her smile faded. She leaned forward, her crown glimmering in silence. The sound of the crowd died down. Every eye was fixed on the circle. The human had not only survived the first storm, he had pushed back. The warrior roared, fury blazing. His spear burned brighter, his muscles tightened. He was ready to crush the human completely, but the court was no longer certain. A whisper began moving through the rows, soft but dangerous. What if the human wins? The queen clenched her hands on the arms of her throne, her voice low but full of venom. "Show me your strength, human," she said. "Let me see if you are anything more than fragile bones." Daniel stood, sweat running down his face, his chest rising and falling. But his eyes never left the queen's, calm, steady, unbroken. He spoke again, not shouting, not trembling. "You will see," and the duel raged on. The dueling circle glowed with pale fire. Shadows danced on the walls as the warrior Zerath circled Daniel. The crowd leaned forward, their voices hushed. For the first time, the court was not laughing. They wanted to see blood. Yet deep inside, many felt curiosity they had never known. Zerath's spear hummed with deadly energy. He spun it in his hands, his body like a storm ready to break. "You will fall, human," he growled. His voice echoed like stone grinding against stone. Daniel stood with no weapon. His bare hands clenched, his body steady though sweat dripped from his face. His chains were gone, but his spirit was the only shield he carried. The queen watched from her black throne, her silver crown shining coldly. Her eyes burned with a strange mix of amusement and doubt. She wanted the human crushed, yet something inside her wanted him to last, perhaps to prove her own cruelty true, perhaps to test a fire she did not understand. The gong struck again. Zerath lunged forward. The spear cut through the air like lightning. Daniel moved, rolling to the side, the spear tip slicing a line of sparks on the floor. The warrior twisted, striking again and again. Each blow came faster, heavier, like thunder falling from the sky. The human dodged, but barely. His body was quick, his mind sharper. He watched the shoulders, the hips, the small signs before each strike. He was not stronger, but he was clever. He used timing. He used patience. The crowd gasped as Daniel slipped past another strike. His hand brushing the spear shaft for only a moment. Zerath roared in fury, insulted that his prey lasted this long. The spear came down in a crushing blow. Daniel ducked, and in that heartbeat, he struck back. His fist drove forward, not into the chest, not into the armored skin, but into the throat, a place unguarded. The sound was sharp. Zerath staggered, choking. His spear faltered, his knees bent for just a breath. The hall erupted in noise, gasps, cries, shouts. "Impossible!" One courtier hissed. A human touched him. Another whispered. The queen's smile faded. Her eyes narrowed. Her laughter did not come. Daniel did not celebrate. He stood calm, his chest rising and falling, his eyes fixed on the warrior. He knew it was only the beginning. The strike was not victory, but proof. Proof that humans were not helpless. Proof that one human could fight back. Zerath's fury burned like fire. His green eyes glowed brighter. He gripped his spear and roared. The sound shook the banners on the walls. He charged again, every strike now filled with rage. Sparks flew as the spear smashed stone. The floor cracked under his power, but Daniel kept moving. The courtiers leaned closer. Some had lost their cruel smiles. Their whispers grew louder. He lasts too long. He should be dead. What if? Their words faded into fear. The queen lifted her hand, silencing them. Her voice was low but sharp. "Do not look away. Watch this fight. Remember it." Her eyes stayed on Daniel. Her mind no longer certain. She hated the thought, but she could not stop it. The human was different. The duel raged on. Zerath struck like a storm. Daniel answered like a shadow, his feet light, his body moving with desperate grace. He was tired, his arms heavy, but his spirit refused to break. Then it came again. The opening. The warrior's fury blinded him. He swung wide, too wide. Daniel stepped in, his hand gripping the shaft of the spear. His knee drove into the warrior's gut. The sound echoed like a drum. Zerath stumbled. The hall roared. Some courtiers stood in shock. The impossible had happened twice. A human had struck an alien warrior not once, but twice. The silence that followed was heavier than steel. The queen leaned forward, her crown tilting in the glow of the firelight, her lips parted. She wanted to laugh, but no sound came. Her heart beat faster. She had mocked humans as fragile. Yet before her eyes, one stood unbroken. One struck like thunder. Daniel stood tall. His body ached, his breath came hard, but his eyes stayed calm, steady, unyielding. He spoke, his voice carrying across the hall. "You said humans are weak," he said, "but weakness is not in the flesh. It is in the spirit." The words burned into the silence. The courtiers froze. Some lowered their eyes, unable to meet his gaze. The queen clenched her hands on the throne, her silver nails biting into the black stone. Her pride screamed, but her mind whispered another truth. Zerath roared again. He was not finished. His pride would not allow it. He raised his spear with both hands, glowing brighter, ready to end it in one final strike. The crowd shouted, the air shook. But Daniel did not step back. His eyes stayed locked on the queen, not the warrior. The first strike had already changed everything. The fight was no longer about survival, it was about truth. And the truth had cracked the walls of the mocking throne. The hall no longer echoed with laughter. Only silence and sharp breaths filled the air. The warrior Zereth stood tall again, his spear burning like fire in his hands, but his movements had slowed. The bruises on his neck and ribs told a story no one expected. Daniel, the human, stood facing him with nothing but his bare hands. Blood ran from his lip. His shoulder hung a little lower from exhaustion, but his eyes, they remained unshaken. The queen leaned forward on her throne. Her fingers gripped the black stone armrests as if she was trying to crush them. She had never seen this before. She had laughed at humans, called them toys, pets, and animals. But this one, this Daniel, he was rewriting everything. End him, she whispered. Not to the court, not even to her guards, but to herself. She needed to see him fall. She needed her court to see that humans could not stand against her empire. Zerath roared, the sound like thunder tearing through metal. He charged once more, spear raised high, energy screaming from its blade. Daniel didn't flinch. He waited, breathing slowly, watching every motion. The moment came. A wide arc, too powerful, too proud. Daniel dropped to the ground, rolled under the spear's path, and came up beside the warrior. His elbow slammed into Zerath's side, followed by a punch to the lower back. The giant stumbled, falling to one knee. Gasps filled the room like wind rushing through broken glass. The queen stood from her throne. The courtiers looked at her, unsure if they should speak or stay silent. She did not shout, did not smile. Her face was still, her heart racing. This human was not just resisting, he was winning. Daniel stepped back. Breathing hard, he did not celebrate. He knew the fight was not over, but he also knew something had changed. The tide had turned. The queen's most trusted warrior, the pride of her court, was now bleeding and panting before a slave. Some of the courtiers looked away. Others whispered, "He's not just surviving, he's teaching her a lesson," Zerath growled, his pride burning brighter than his pain. He struck again, faster now, wild. His spear slammed into the floor, the wall, a pillar. Never Daniel. The human dodged with focus, even as his body screamed from fatigue. He was a storm in silence, a fire with no smoke. And then, he struck again. A sharp kick to the back of the warrior's knee. Zerath collapsed with a roar, his weapon flying from his hands. It clattered across the stone floor, spinning until it stopped near the queen's feet. The throne room froze. Daniel stood over Zerath, his chest rising and falling. His hands were open, ready to end it if needed, but still empty. The warrior groaned, but did not rise again. The queen's jaw tightened, her pride cracked like glass under pressure. The silence was so loud it hurt. She walked down the steps slowly, her gown dragging like the tail of a serpent. Every step echoed. She stopped before Daniel, face to face, eyes burning into his. "Why don't you finish him?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but beneath it was something darker. Fear. Daniel's voice was soft. "Because I don't fight to destroy, I fight to survive, and to show you that we are not weak." The queen blinked as if his words struck harder than any punch. The courtiers looked at one another, unsure what to do, unsure what to believe anymore. The warrior was defeated. The human stood alone and yet taller than all. "I could have you executed," the queen said, her voice low. "You could," Daniel replied, "but that won't change what your court just saw." The queen stared at him, searching for something in his face, fear, pride, arrogance, but she found only calm strength. Her hand lifted halfway, then dropped. She turned away and walked back to her throne. The hall remained silent as she sat down. Daniel did not kneel. He did not speak again. He simply waited. The queen looked around her court. Her eyes found every noble, Every guard, every whisperer, and all of them were looking at the human now. Not her. Her voice cut through the silence. "Take him away," she said. "Not as a slave, not as a prisoner." Everyone leaned forward, hearts pounding. "Take him," she said slowly. "As a guest." The court gasped. Daniel blinked, confused but not surprised. He had not come to win favor, only to survive with dignity. But this was more. Guards stepped forward, unsure whether to bow or salute him. Daniel walked quietly past the broken warrior, past the still burning spear, and out of the circle that once belonged only to the strong, and for the first time in the Queen's long rule. She sat on her throne, not laughing, not mocking, but thinking. The tide had turned, and the throne, once mocking, now watched the rise of something new. The palace grew quieter after the duel. The laughter of the courtiers didn't return. Their sharp words softened. Their proud steps slowed. Something had shifted. But no one dared say it aloud. Daniel, the human who had stood against the Queen's champion and survived, was no longer in chains. He was not called a slave anymore, not by name. But the walls still whispered it. He was given a chamber. Not a cell. Not a cage, but a real room. It had no windows. But it had a bed, clean clothes, and water that tasted sweet. It was more than any human in the palace had ever been allowed. Yet Daniel remained silent, watching, waiting. The Queen hadn't summoned him again, not for 3 days. But her eyes had never stopped watching him from afar. She sat on her throne during court, her smile empty, her thoughts always drifting back to that quiet stare, that calm voice, that refusal to kneel. She hated it. But she was drawn to it on the 4th day. She called for him, not in the hall, but in her private chamber. The guards brought Daniel in, though they didn't touch him. The Queen stood near a glowing fire, her crown gone, her long silver hair flowing down her back. "You've become a symbol," she said without turning. "Some call you the spark, the others call you the threat." Daniel said nothing. His hands were by his sides, calm as ever. The Queen turned slowly. Her eyes weren't full of fury this time. They were curious, tired, maybe even troubled. "Why didn't you kill Zerath when you had the chance?" she asked. "Because I fight to live," Daniel replied. "Not to prove I'm better, but to show I'm not less." The Queen laughed softly, but the sound was hollow. "You think mercy is strength? I think knowing when to stop is stronger than not knowing when to quit," he answered. The Queen moved closer, her eyes locking with his. "You confuse many here, human. They don't know whether to fear you or admire you." "Even I am unsure. That's your weakness," Daniel said. "You were always certain before, but now you've seen something you can't forget." Her jaw tightened. She raised her hand as if to strike him, but her hand did not move. Her fingers trembled slightly. She lowered it, turning away again. "You made me question what I believed," she said quietly. "That's dangerous." "You can silence your court," Daniel said. "But you can't silence the truth." She turned back fast, her eyes blazing again. "Then tell me the truth. Human, why aren't you afraid of me?" Daniel looked straight at her. His voice was low but steady. "Because fear only works on people who think they have something left to lose. I already lost everything." That line hit her harder than any weapon. She stepped back, her breath caught for a second. Her mask of power cracked, and she hated how deeply his words had reached. "You speak like someone who's already dead," she said. "No," he replied. "I speak like someone who already lived through worse than this." Silence filled the chamber. Only the fire crackled. Then, she did something strange. She offered him a cup. Not poisoned, not spilled, real hot tea. Daniel took it, but didn't drink. He just looked at her. "You want me to kneel," he said quietly, "but not to your power. You want me to kneel to the part of you that doubts everything you believed?" Her lips parted slightly. No words came out. "You want me broken," he continued. "Because if I'm not, then maybe the rest of your world is broken instead." She turned away again, walking slowly toward the fire. Her voice was low, almost whispering now. "I was born to rule, taught that emotion is weakness. I crushed rebellions with one command. I've destroyed cities from orbit." Daniel didn't move, "And yet," she whispered, "you said 3 words that keep me awake. Humans aren't weak." She looked at him one last time, and for the first time there was no power in her eyes, only pain. "Go." she said softly. Before I decide, I still need to prove something. Daniel bowed his head slightly. Not in submission, but in quiet respect. Then he turned and left. The guards outside looked at him differently now. They didn't push, didn't speak. Some even lowered their eyes back in the Queen's chamber. She sat down by the fire. Her hands trembled slightly. She stared into the flames. And for the first time in her life, she asked herself, what if I was wrong? The palace had changed. Not with war, but with whispers since the duel. The name Daniel spread across every hall, every corridor, every servant's room, even among the royal guards, and not as a joke, not as a warning, but as a story. He had no weapon, no army, no bloodline, but he had done something no one else had ever done. He made the court look up to a human. The alien queen heard it all. She didn't stop the rumors. She didn't punish the whispers. She let them echo, because part of her, deep inside, wanted to hear them too. Daniel stayed in the palace, not as a slave, not yet as a free man, but as something undefined. The queen had not summoned him again for many days, but he knew somehow she was preparing something. Then came the morning when he was called again, this time not to her private chamber, not to a quiet room, but to the great hall, the place where it had all started. The same throne, the same tall pillars, the banners still hung above, showing the queen's many victories, but this time there was no mocking laughter. The court was full but quiet. The queen sat on her throne, her face unreadable, her crown back on her head, her robe of power flowing around her like waves of cold air. When Daniel entered, the guards did not stop him. They opened a clear path. He walked slowly across the stone floor, his footsteps echoing louder than a war drum. When he stood at the center, the queen rose. I have summoned you, she said, because there is something I need to do. The court waited. Breath held. Daniel tilted his head slightly. And what is that? She stepped down. One step at a time. You shamed my champion, she said. You broke the fear in my court. She stopped in front of him, close enough to touch. And worst of all, she said, her voice now soft, you made me question myself. Gasps rippled through the hall. Daniel said nothing, but his eyes never moved from hers. The queen reached behind her head and removed her crown. Her silver hair spilled forward, catching the light. Her hands trembled, just a little. I built my empire on strength, she said. On domination, fear, and silence, she paused. Then looked at him. But strength, I've come to realize, is not only in power. Daniel blinked slowly, unsure what she was about to do. Then in front of her entire court, her entire empire, she knelt. One knee touched the ground, her head bowed slightly. A sound escaped from somewhere in the crowd. A choked gasp, a guard dropped his weapon in shock. No one had ever seen the queen kneel, not to kings, not to gods. Not even in war. Daniel stared at her. His voice came low. Why? She lifted her eyes. Her voice just above a whisper. Because to recognize strength in another is not weakness. It's truth. She looked at him. Not as a ruler, not as a goddess, but as a person. You made me see humanity for the first time. And it broke something inside me I didn't know was cracked. Tears welled in the eyes of some nobles. Others fell to their knees behind her, not knowing why, only feeling something had changed forever. The queen stood again, slowly, carefully. She placed her crown in Daniel's hands. Not to give it to you, she said, but to share the weight of it. Even for a moment, Daniel held the crown. Heavy and cold, then he handed it back. I don't need this, he said gently. You already bowed, that was enough. She looked at him, eyes softer than ever before, and nodded in that moment. The throne no longer stood alone. The queen returned to her seat, but it felt different. She didn't rise above the court anymore. She was now part of it. Daniel stepped back, but not down. He remained standing, tall among aliens who had once called him nothing. And for the first time in palace history, it was not the queen's voice that ended the court. It was silence, deep, respectful, powerful silence, the kind that only comes after a sacred moment. The bow had not broken her. It had completed her. And the human who caused it didn't carry a sword, didn't raise an army. He simply stood. They called it a silent revolution. There were no bombs, no broken walls, no screams of war. Yet something inside the palace and across the stars had changed forever. One human stood while the queen knelt. That image burned into the memory of all who saw it. And in time it reached those who did not. News of the bow spread from system to system, carried by ships, stories, and whispers. The alien queen, once known for burning cities and bending rulers, had bowed to a human not in defeat by blade, but in recognition of spirit on distant planets. Humans in chains heard the tale. Some cried, some laughed, others simply whispered. "It's real," alien children asked their parents. "Why did the queen kneel?" And their parents didn't know how to answer in the weeks that followed. Daniel became more than a name, he became a symbol. He did not wear robes of power, did not sit on thrones, he refused titles. He walked the halls in simple clothes, helping those who once ignored him, speaking kindly to the very guards who once chained him. He was given rooms fit for nobility, but he spent more time among the servants, listening to their stories, asking nothing. One day, a small alien child, afraid and trembling, approached him with dirty hands and wide eyes. The child held out a cracked cup. "You dropped this in the duel," she said. Daniel knelt, not in defeat, but in thanks. He took the broken cup with a smile. "Thank you," he said. "This means more than you know." The queen watched from a distance, her heart heavier than before, but also lighter in a strange way. She had not changed overnight, no ruler does. But something inside her had softened. A voice she used to ignore now spoke louder each day. She began asking questions during court, questions no one expected. Is this new policy fair to humans? Did anyone ask the workers what they need? The nobles grew nervous. They had never seen their queen listen to voices from below, but she didn't stop. One evening, she summoned Daniel again, this time not for a fight, not for judgment, but for conversation. "Do you believe a ruler can change?" she asked. Daniel looked at her, his answer simple. "Yes, but only if they want to," she nodded slowly. "I want to." That moment, quiet as it was, shook the foundation of an empire. Months passed, and then years. Human children began to attend alien schools. Human workers were offered fair wages. Many were still afraid. Many still doubted. But the first cracks in the old walls had appeared. Across the galaxy, other rulers took notice. If the Iron Queen of Zither bowed to a human, who were they to pretend they were above change? Some laughed, some resisted, but others listened. And slowly, planet by planet, city by city, humans were seen differently. Not as pets, not as slaves, but as equals. Daniel refused all statues, he refused gold. He kept the cracked cup given to him by the child. He placed it on a simple wooden shelf, next to a torn cloth from his first day in the palace. When asked what he believed made him strong, he only said, "I didn't kneel when they expected me to, and I didn't hate them when they did." The queen eventually stepped down. She gave the throne to a council, a mix of aliens and humans chosen by their people. She traveled then, sometimes alone, sometimes with Daniel, visiting the places she once ruled through fear. Now with quiet humility, no one called her the Burning Queen anymore. They called her the one who bowed. And Daniel, the human with calm eyes and no weapons, became known across galaxies as the one who stood. Children read about them in books. Elders told stories by firelight. Some said the throne itself wept the day it saw truth. But Daniel only smiled when asked, "What did you gain from it all?" And he answered, "I didn't come to win. I just wanted to show them we were never less." And in that simple truth, the galaxy found something greater than power. It found legacy not written in blood or titles, but in hearts, and that more than any throne lasted forever.